I used to think I needed all the colors. And this was my reality until I learned about color theory and limited palettes. And no one can describe the benefits of a limited palette better than James Gurney. More colors don't make a better color scheme. In fact, the opposite is usually true. Paintings from limited palettes are more harmonious. If you don't have a color called green grass, you'll have to mix it from scratch, and you're more likely to get the right green that way. In fact, you can paint almost anything in nature with just 4 or 5 colors. And that's when I discovered arguably the best palette in the world, the Zorn palette, using titanium white, cadmium red light, yellow ochre, and ivory black. And it was created by a Swedish painter named Anders Zorn. And I've used the Zorn palette before, many times. In fact, it's my go-to palette anytime I'm doing a portrait. But ever since I've seen this self-portrait of Anders Zorn in this big red coat, I've always wanted to do my own painting of someone in a big red coat. Seeing as it's close to the end of the year, and that's when a giant man in a red suit comes along, I figured he would be the perfect specimen. This painting is going to be done on a 16 by 20 wood panel that I've prepped and stained. I stain my canvases because honestly I don't like working on a blank white canvas. Most of the time in nature and in portraits, there's not a lot of bright, pure white things. So by doing a neutral stain on there, I can get a really even balance to build my painting on. And now that I got my sketch laid out, I'm going to start with the underpainting. For the underpainting layer, I guess I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to use a raw umber, and this is really just out of habit. I could have mixed up a brown color by using the Zorn palette, but I'm going to be taking some creative liberties here out of just pure habit. It's really not going to drastically affect the painting. I'm just super comfortable working with a raw umber underpainting, and the whole point of this underpainting is really just to start reinforcing my sketch. I don't really seal my sketch layer. I kind of just use it as a guideline of where things should be. So think of this underpainting as almost an extension of sketching. And another thing I won't do in the future is use an ivory black for the underpainting. I tried it out and I hated it, so this is kind of just a mental note to not do that again. And here we have the finished underpainting. My main goal with the underpainting is to focus on the big shapes. I'm not going to go into the face and focus on every little detail that's there. I'm mainly looking to reinforce the values and build on the structure. So now while this is drying, I'm going to go and start pre-mixing my palette. Now one thing that really started to elevate me was pre-mixing my palette. You really don't have to, especially with these limited palettes. There's really only 4 colors. You can kind of mix your colors on the fly, but one way that I learned was to almost separate color mixing from the painting itself. What this allows me to do is kind of forget about the brush strokes, forget about where I'm going to be making some markings, and kind of study the painting while I'm prepping to paint. So what I mean by that is you're going to see I'm going to do these strips of paint, and they're going to be the different zones of the painting or different color regions. So his red suit is going to have all these different hues and values of red. And then for the skin tones, there's going to be a little bit more yellows and pinks and so on. And what this allows me to do is actually really study the painting and prep my palette. So when I start to begin the painting process, I've got a really good understanding of what I'm about to paint. Typically when I start my paintings, I try to start with the most difficult area first, but this one I took a different approach. I actually wanted an easy victory here. So that's why I started with this little belt area. It's a really simple area, there's not a ton going on, and it's kind of just getting me in the flow of painting. This is one of my bigger portraits that I've done, and because of that, this entire painting is not going to get done in one sitting. So I have to be pretty strategic with what I'm going to paint with each sitting. Now, normally you'd start with the background and work forward, but due to the composition of this painting and when I want to actually tackle the beard, there's going to be a special technique that I need to be doing the background and the beard at the same time, which you'll see later on. So I decided to get another big victory here and get this bold red on the painting and really get some creative juices flowing. All right. So now I'm going to be targeting the face. Normally, I actually feel quite confident with it. I don't know what it is about this piece, but I'm a little bit intimidated by it. I think it's just because it's such a subtle expression. It's going to be a little bit more difficult than normal, but yeah, to say I'm fully confident going into this face, I would be lying. Faces are not typically something that I stray away from. In fact, they're usually the first thing I target in any painting. But there was something about this portrait that was really intimidating, and I don't know if it was the subtleness to it, I don't know if it was the palette, but for whatever reason, I pushed it off as long as I could. But clearly my nerves got the best of me, because about halfway through, Santa got some liver disease and developed some jaundice. Now, this was a little bit of some unknown territory for me. I've never really had a portrait that was yellow, or at least turning yellow. So I decided to mix in a little bit more of the cool ivory black to sort of dull down the yellow a bit, as well as put some more of the reds into the skin tones to give them a little bit more life. And thankfully it helped cure Santa's jaundice, and I was thankfully able to move on and continue with the painting. Okay, so I've let this dry overnight and I'm looking at it with fresh eyes right now. And I can tell that there's something missing, but overall I'm pretty happy with how the face turned out. And I could definitely spend a whole nother session just focusing on the face and all the little fine details in there. But there's a lot of things going on in this painting right now that's not correct. And that's either going to be exaggerating or masking a lot of problems that are going on with the face. So I think a really good strategy right now, because I'm about 90% happy with the face, is to focus on a lot of the other areas of the painting, focus on the main composition, and then for the last little bit of the painting, we can focus on these little details. So let's dive back into it. Now for this background, there's a little bit of detail back there, but I really don't want to focus too much on the detail. I want to focus on the general image behind it. So one trick I've learned is whatever brush size you think you need to accomplish that detail, go a size or two up. What this does is it forces you to be a little bit more general and a little bit more abstract with the details. And this, at least in my opinion, is a little bit less distracting to the viewer. Now, if you remember earlier on when I said that part of this painting is going to be time sensitive, this is that point where I'm going to be painting the background and the beard. And what it allows me to do is feather his beard furs into the background. And I'm doing this by painting wet into wet. It really makes for some softer transitions. If I were to have painted the background first and then tried to layer on his beard over top, I could get a similar effect, but the paint wouldn't be mixing at all, and it would be much harder edges. So by painting them at the same time, cleaning my brush with every single beard brush stroke, I can get this really smooth transition. And what I'm doing here is taking a completely dry brush and cleaning up some of the edges. I do a little bit of a brush stroke, clean off my brush, do another brush stroke to try and blend in and mask some of those harder edges. Now I took the lessons I learned from the portrait for the hands and I pushed them a little bit more warmer than I initially thought. Thankfully, I had some leftover paint from when I was painting the face that I could basically just directly use that for the hands. Well, it's been about 10 days since I started this painting. I'm about ready for it to be finished. I still got a couple areas I've got to do. Still got to do his sleeve, and then from there I'm going to go back and do some touch-ups. I'm happy earlier on I didn't dive too much into the face details, because now that there's more unity within the painting, there's actually some areas that are sticking out to me that are issues, and other parts that I thought were issues are no longer there. So I'm really hoping this is my last session. It's just finish up the painting I need to do, tidy up all the little details, and yeah, let's knock this painting home. At this point, after 10 days straight of painting, I was exhausted. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't painting for like 8 hours a day, but just coming home after work, using what little energy I had left to put into this painting, I was at my wit's end. So I was really hoping with this last session, I could tidy up everything and call this painting finished. Thankfully, this last session was merely just a cleanup phase. There was a couple areas that I noticed were really sticking out, and just take a little bit of paint, touch up those areas. I was able to finish this painting, put some final touches on, and with that, we have our completed painting. This painting was a lot of fun. It was one of the biggest human portraits I've ever done. There was a big time restraint trying to make sure I get this done before December. And to finally do what I've always wanted to do, which is a Zorn palette painting with a big red dominant figure in it, was just the cherry on top. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to get your very own copy, I have prints available on my website for the holiday season only. Once the holiday season is done, no more prints will be available. So head over to lukedurden.com/prints and grab your very own print of Santa today. And thanks for watching this video. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like, leave a little comment if you enjoyed this, and hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell notification to get notified as soon as I drop a new video. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks.